Good afternoon, folks. I'm still getting the camera ready here. I just sat back down, and apparently I lost a couple inches. That's a little better. Anyway, we're going to take a look at the severe weather threat as we head through the next about 24 hours or so, hanging out in severe weather forecast center. You can always tell because we're back in behind the set, kind of a behind-the-scenes look at things. Anyway, by the way, sorry about moving around so much at the start of this. Okay, so what are we looking at? Notice by my joviality here, it's not exactly the most dire situation over the next 24 hours, but we are concerned about some severe weather, and this is what the SPC has put out, a marginal to a slight risk for severe weather across the area as we head through tomorrow night and kind of lingering around into early Saturday morning. I would argue that as we move through the day tomorrow, this slight risk here might be lifted a little farther back off to the north and west. But for the most part, you might be talking about something that looks like this with a marginal risk that maybe comes out to there. But really, I don't think we'll get an enhanced risk. I also don't think we'll get a moderate or even a high risk either. Well, one thing I did want to point out, by the way, if you're to search for a tornado, for example, hey, we got a threat for tornadoes. Got to spell it right first. We got one tornado, and it's actually on the side here. You're going to learn about tornadoes. What that tells us is that it's not in any of the verbiage here from the SPC, which tells us they aren't necessarily too concerned about tornadoes, which is good news as we head through the next 24 hours or so. So here's what's from the SPC. From SIPS Analogs, I love using this, out of St. Louis University. Really, you look at the top 8 analogs in terms of severe weather, and hey, we got a big old goose egg sitting on top of us. Doesn't mean we can't see anything. Obviously, the SPC seeing something. We're also seeing something here, but nevertheless, you look back in history and you say, well, what are the chances we get severe weather? Oh, not really. So anyway, let's take a look at things. How about that? Top down. That's how we like to do it. We'll start 10-meter wind. Now, let's start aloft. 300 millibar winds coming back out of the west and southwest. What you like to see in here oftentimes is the spreading of these isobars here, but we don't necessarily have it. Notice that the flow around this usually, here's the area of low pressure. When we want to get severe weather back here, we want the low to maybe be in here. It can be up here, perhaps even down here. And we want these isobars to be really close here, and then when they kind of come around, they kind of stretch out, and they kind of do one of those deals. So we don't necessarily have that this time aloft. We're not getting that spreading of the atmosphere. And what that allows you to do is take everything, it makes it easier to take the stuff that's down here at the surface and push it up into the atmosphere. Vorticity, it's all up here, right around the low. Looks like we've got a couple little lobes up here, but really not much happening down here, which is fine. You look at vertical velocity, we don't really have much of that either across parts of Mississippi. You could make the argument a little bit of elevated vertical velocity, kind of right in that ballpark or so across central Louisiana, parts of southeastern Texas, and into south central Mississippi. But for the most part, all your reds and light greens and yellows are all up in here. And we'll go back down a little farther, 850 millibar dew point. And again, folks, if you've never watched one of these videos, the atmosphere broken down by millibars just makes the math easier for us weather guys and weather women as well. It just makes it easier for us to do that instead of 15,000 feet. The math just gets a whole lot easier if you're talking about pressure rather than altitude. You can think about 850 millibars at about 4,500 feet. I think 700 millibars will put you at about 9,000 feet or so, 500 at about 18,000 feet, and 300 millibars puts you at about 25 to 30,000 feet, if I remember correctly. Going off the top of my head, sorry, I don't have the numbers with me. Anyway, back to this 850 millibar dew point. We're getting a nice surge of moisture, which is good. We do want that for showers and thunderstorms because that's pushing in that moisture at the low levels, and then you say, okay, so we got moisture at 850 millibars. What can we do with it? Can we boost it anywhere? Can we get any vertical velocity with that dew point? We can. We've got a little. And then, you look at, we'll go up to 300 millibars or so. We say, are we spreading the atmosphere aloft? And again, I look at it top down just because it's easier. But if you look at it this way, it might make more sense So you're saying, okay, down at the surface, hey, we got moisture, we got heat. What are we doing with it? We're moving it vertically? Okay, maybe a little. And if we move it vertically, does it have anywhere to go? Okay, a little. We are getting a little bit of spreading in the atmosphere here. So, again, that's why I think the SPC is a little concerned, because they're saying, okay, we're going to have plenty of moisture down here at the surface. By the way, anywhere between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius in terms of a dew point at 850 millibars. Okay, so we probably get some strong to maybe even borderline severe storms. So what do we have in terms of instability? Our CAPE, joules per kilogram, doing pretty good. Anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 or so joules per kilogram down here, and that'll do you pretty good in terms of getting a good strong thunderstorm to marginally severe in itself. You can then take this. I'm going to outline. I'll outline this just real quickly. We'll just kind of do one of those, because we're going to take that and we're going to compare it to the places where we've got a little bit of shear, and it looks like most of from the surface to 500 millibar bulk shear is to the north of that. And this is one thing we've been talking about a lot recently, is how cold fronts and all of the action down here at the surface seems to outrun all the stuff aloft that you need to get things going, whether it's shear or a good wind at 300 millibars or a good wind at 500 millibars coming out of the west. We don't necessarily have it down here, even though we've got the front at the surface and plenty of moisture. It's got nowhere to go. And so all the shear looks to be to the north, and we can take a look. All the helicity seems to be to the north. Again, here's your helicity values that are higher. It's anywhere between about 75 meters per second and about 300 or so. You can pull that back. That's where, all the shear is up here or so. So you got your shear, you've got your helicity, and then you've got your CAPE all the way down here. And again, there's your instability. So things aren't necessarily lining up the way you'd like them to get any severe weather. Now that's in the morning, but that's Friday morning. Now we'll go ahead and take a look into Friday afternoon, and again, 300 millibars go back aloft, and I don't necessarily see any spreading of these isobars necessarily. I mean, we've got a little bit kind of in here, but really, I'd prefer to be out here, but then again, it's too cold up there to get anything going for the most part. All right, we'll bring it down to 500 millibar. You're looking at vorticic, and we got one, maybe a little lobe there. But really, a little bit happening back here. Nothing that really jumps off the page. We still have a little bit of vertical velocity. That's something I care a little bit more about at 700 millibars across some of our eastern and southeastern counties. On top of that, down at the surface, we've got dew points that are a little bit higher. Looks like the higher dew points maybe back off to the west. You can see, by the way, where the front is. You can always tell that because it's where the dew point goes from being nice and juicy to bone dry. So we could probably paint that in right about there or so. And again, you can always look back and you can say, okay, well, there's the front 850 compared to where it might be as you kind of look aloft. We'll clear that out. And again, we'll take a look at instability. Most of it kind of shifts off to the south and east. But notice where we had that nice little bubble of vertical velocity sits right about in there or so. But it looks like all the shear, again, still back off to the north, though we do have sufficient 20, 30, perhaps even getting in toward 40 knots or so. And then you look at helicity, and it looks like the most we can get is back off to the west. So, again, as we head through Friday afternoon, unimpressed as it sits right now in terms of a serious, organized, severe weather threat. We'll keep a close eye on things like we always do. But I think if you're trying to make plans for Friday or Friday afternoon, I would definitely pack an umbrella. I would definitely be prepared for severe weather. But in terms of being prepared for any serious, organized, severe weather outbreak, I don't think we have to worry about that. An isolated tornado, though not in the SPC's write-up and discussion, can't be ruled out given the time of year that we're in and where we live. But I really think this is going to be a rain, straight-line wind, and perhaps small hail kind of an event. And probably one with a pretty decent light show if showers and thunderstorms stick around long enough on Friday night. And again, I'll update all of this as things change as we move to the next 24 hours or so. You can always check back on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter for all the updates. And if one needs to be posted, it will be here again. Thanks, guys.